talk to you about some of the supplies that you'll need. I'm not sure what you're going to have at home or if we'll be at school, so let's talk a little bit about what you'll need. This brush right here is a number 7 brush. I really like it. Put it up against my hand so you can see. I really like it. I do a lot of my painting with this and a big brush, and pretty much that's it. I have a whole bunch of other brushes. Sometimes I get a real small brush out for the final details, or what we call a rigger, which is my absolute favorite brush, which is teeny. Let me get it wet. It makes a really great line. So this is a rigger. It's long. It kind of makes it really nice. It bends real nicely. So, but really, I pretty much paint with these 2 brushes. Don't tell anybody because I spend a lot of money on other brushes. But I like these 2. I like a big brush. I think use a bigger brush when you can. You're going to have some cake watercolors probably if you're at home. And if you're not, you'll have some watercolors at school that will be more like a palette, and I'll show you in a minute. But your cake watercolors could come in a lot of different forms. There. It could be the Crayola ones, which I can't find mine right now, or it could be this kind. Crayolas are fine with what we're going to do, especially today. So I want to talk to you a little bit about line and brush control. As we work today, we're going to do a series of just exercises. So relax. This is just a learning time really to figure out how to use the brush, how to control the brush, and how to control the paint. Okay, so practice. You don't learn if you don't make mistakes, and you don't get better if you don't practice. So make sure you're practicing all of this. Each day that we paint, or that I give you some painting work to do, I want you to think about warming up, and that's what we're going to do today. So I'll give you some warm-ups each time, or if I refer back to these like a series of lines or circles or whatever, that's what I want you to warm up with, because it will really help you a lot. Okay, so let's get busy. Let me switch the camera around and we'll get busy and start. So today the things you're going to need for this exercise are your brushes. I'm just going to use the small brush and a medium brush. You're going to need your paints, whatever form that is. You're going to need some water, and you're going to need some kind of a cloth for blotting. Okay, so let's get started. So before you start anything, you should usually just pick a couple colors that you're going to work with. And I like to kind of start these exercises with a little bit of a darker color. So I got my reds and my purples and my greens wet. So I'm going to zoom into my paper here a little bit so you can see exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, so once I've activated this, I don't want to get my brush too wet because it will make my paint a little thin or runny. So I just want nice strong lines. So once I've activated my paint, do this here, you can kind of see, you have to rub it a little bit. So there I've got a nice line. Okay, move that off to the side. So what I want you to do is I want you to look how my finger, can you see how my finger is on the paper? And I'm going to start, and I'm not even going to touch the paper yet, and I'm just going to make some lines. And my finger keeps the brush the same distance away from the paper. So once I'm comfortable making these lines, and I'm moving my arm from my shoulder, I'm not moving my wrist at all, I'm moving my arm from my shoulder. So now make a couple lines, and now I touch the paper. Just bring it all the way across. And you want to try to keep the brush the same distance, because when I pick up my finger and do this, I get a little shaky, and I press and lift up, and my line's not as consistent. That's still a nice line though. So let's get some more, but I want you to learn about control right now. I want you to do more of these solid lines. So I got a little more paint on there because I was starting to run out of paint. Just make some lines. Kind of come in between. Again, like I said, this is about learning to control your brush. They're not always going to be perfectly straight. They do kind of look cool though, don't they? And right there where it hiccuped, that's fine, don't worry about it. Sometimes you're going to want that to happen anyhow. And I think the paper's a little wavy, so that's what's happening there. So I'll just push a little more, make a thicker line. And as I go down the paper, I'm going to explore it a little bit. See where it got dry? That's kind of cool. I have not dipped my brush back in the water at all. Okay, a little darker. I'm going to press a little more. See how my line's a little thicker? Much thicker than up here. And I want to keep my brush at a point, so if it doesn't stay at the point, I dip it back in the paint and turn it a little bit, and it kind of gets it pointy again. Now because I'm pressing more, I'm using more paint because I'm making a thicker line, right? And I'm going to go back to a thin line. Just want you to explore a little bit. I'm outside, you might hear the breeze blowing. You might hear dogs barking. You might hear my dog panting over there because he just ran away and I had to go get him. And now he's all tired and hot. And my other dog's in the cage because he was the instigator of the runaway. They're bad. They went visiting. My neighbor has goats and chickens, and I don't like them to visit there. Okay, whole series of lines, just one page of lines. I don't know. Now, notice I came down the paper because if I come across this now and put my hand or my finger on there before it's dry, it's going to make smears. We're going to play with this a little bit more, but it's a good warm-up session for you. But I do want you, let's see, how far did I go? Yeah, there you go. I want you to do a whole page of lines as a warm-up first thing, okay? And then we'll come back together. Okay, we're back. Now, the first set of lines I made with this smaller brush. We're going to make a set of lines with the brush that's a little bigger. I'm not sure what you're going to have available to you, but I'm also going to change colors. So let's see, I activated the blue when we started. So I'm going to go with blue. And I'm going to do the same thing. It's dry now. See, I can run my hand over it and it doesn't get wet. So I'm going to start and just make a mark, the smallest line I can. It skipped a beat, but don't worry about it. See that blank space? Don't worry about it. This is just an exercise, okay? See how close you can get them together? It's about the same width as these lines, right? But I'm still using a bigger brush. So, there. I want you to kind of play around with how you can make as thin a line as possible. And let me reload. We've got video games. And I'm going to push it. Make a nice straight line. That dry brush right there is really pretty, isn't it? So I'm going to try to make it consistent all the way across. So I'm going to push the same consistency. Well, that didn't work very well, did it? But it's not a big deal. So what I need is more water. I'm not going to try to fix that. I'm just going to come up here and do it again. I just added a little water to my little hole. That's good. Let's do a couple of those. Now let's do a medium one. Ooh. And see if I can get a thin one in between. See my finger? Remember I told you my finger is resting on the paper as I slide it across. Just two colors, or you could use the same color. Using my shoulder. Notice my hand is staying the same. Trying to keep them straight. This is just an exercise in brush control. Now, see how the brush got kind of flat there? I don't know if you can see that. That will be a nice thin line. I can make a really super thin line when it did that. See how it's flat? So I just kept it on the flat side. Using my finger. Can you see my pinky sliding along there? I'm going to turn it now. What would happen if I turn it? See the flatness? Need a little more water in there. I'm just making straight lines. I know you might think this is boring, but it's good exercise. The whole page. As thin a line as you can. And maybe then go some medium lines. You can vary the lines. Get a little more water in there and some paint. straight lines. Brush, whoops, brush control. Okay. Now it's your turn. Do that.